Part of the struggle of running a ranch and holding down a full-time job is finding time to do everything. And lately what that has meant for me is a lot of feeding cows in the dark. Feeding in the barn in the dark is not a big deal because it has lights, but when I'm having to run these round bales down to the calves, it can get a little sketchy. So I decided that I need some good lighting on the 8N. But like any project, before I can actually do what I want to do, I have to do a bunch of things to get the tractor ready. What this is going to mean is a switch panel for my light switches and some light mounts on the 8N, because as many of you know, the lighting that came factory on those tractors was minimal at best. So we need to make some upgrades so that this thing can handle and accept some modern lighting. That's what's going on today on Farmer Tyler Ranch. And as I was considering all my different options for lighting for the 8N, a company called Auxbeam contacted me and said that they would send me out some of their products to try. I got these 3-inch pod lights to put on the back of the 8N. These are going to be rear facing. And in my life, I found that the rear facing lights are almost as important as the front facing lights. So I think these are going to be pretty awesome. For the front facing lights though, I went big and I got these 5-inch LED lights. I think these are gonna be super bright. I can't wait to get them wired up and test it out. The problem with the old 8N is there's not a whole lot of good places to mount switches, and I kind of want to mount a temperature gauge at the same time. So of all the things that I want to put on that tractor, there's not really a good place to put all that stuff. My idea is to make an auxiliary switch panel that is going to be able to house all these things. Let's get going with this. I'm excited to get some good lights on that tractor, and I can definitely use it because I use that tractor a lot in the morning before the sun comes up, when I have to feed before I go to work. I'm down here at the ranch now, and I need to try to get a piece of cardboard and use it to make a template for the switch panel that I'm going to make for this tractor. This is the difficult thing about trying to work on a piece of equipment while you simultaneously need it every day or every other day. I don't really want to run this back to the shop and park it there because I'm using this currently to feed round bales. All right, well, this is the general idea. I'm just trying to make this flow with the body lines on the tractor as best as I can. And I know no one's gonna see this but me, and it's an old tractor, doesn't really matter, blah, blah, blah. I like things to look nice, especially things that I'm gonna be sitting on almost every day. So I want this to look good. I want it to look like it belongs there. So with this on the dash, the switches are going to be able to fit right here on the side, and I think I'll box in the back of that to hide the wiring, and I think this is going to look good. This is the best place that I could figure out where to put switches. This is the prototype for now. We're going to go home and cut this out of metal and bring it back and hold it up and see what that looks like. I think in this video we'll focus mostly on the switch panel because I feel like there's going to be enough content to make one entire video. And then in the next video, we'll actually get these lights mounted up and functional. All right, I've got my cardboard pattern transferred to my metal now, but I widened it a little bit because adding the temperature gauge was sort of an afterthought, and I wanted to make sure that I had enough room for that. Now that I'm pretty happy with my pattern here, I'm gonna do the outline with a paint pen because when I'm plasma cutting, it's a lot easier to see that white line from the paint pen. All right, this is starting to look pretty good, but I just kind of dawned on me there's no point in getting too carried away with this until I can take it down to the tractor and hold it up where it's gonna go and make sure that I've got the shape that I want. So let's go do that. We're here at the tractor now, so let's hold this plate up and see how it looks. So I think I can trim the top off a little bit. It doesn't quite follow the line of the hood. Well, the plate fit pretty good, but I think I'm gonna trim it down a little bit more. And since that process is exactly the same as what you guys have already seen me do, we're just gonna pick the video up after I get it to how I think I want it. It probably looks just about the same on camera, but trust me, it is a little bit different and a little bit better now. So the next thing that I need to do is drill some holes for switches and for our temperature gauge, and then cut a relief line in the switch plate so that I can make the bend, and then we can go test fit this thing again. All right, let's see how the switch panel fits now. Oh yeah, that looks good. I'm pretty happy with how this is looking. This is almost exactly what I'd pictured when I came up with this idea. What I have to do next is there's another bolt hole down here at the bottom that I need to locate and drill. And then my plan is to kind of make a little box that sort of encapsulates all this stuff. I don't want exposed wiring here. I don't want to be able to see the back of the gauge. So there's going to be a little box here. It's going to look kind of goofy, I'm afraid, but I'm going to do my best to try to make it follow the body lines on the tractor and blend in as best as I can. But once that's done, it's going to be actually in a really good location, because the wires from the switches and the probe or the sending wire, whatever you would call that for the temperature gauge, can just sort of tuck under the hood right here, and you won't really see any of that. So I think that's going to be good. I'm going to have to seal that box up pretty well, because I don't want wasps to end up making a home in there, and I don't want a bunch of moisture or hay chaff getting in there. That is another big issue that I'm going to have to be thinking about as I build this. I mean, especially like with the seam up here, this would be a perfect place for hay chaff to collect, and then once it gets wet, you would have rust start forming there, and we don't want that. So what I might end up doing is like putting some silicone or something in there to sort of fill that crack and keep that stuff out of there. So I think the next step now is to make a pattern for this side piece and the back piece and the bottom piece, and hopefully kind of get that all put together. My goal is to get this thing painted today so that tomorrow or the next day I can start actually wiring and installing the lights, the whole point of all this. But I'm not sure if we're gonna get that far or not. I've got this side piece about as close as I can get it. This took a really long time to get this radius correct and to get everything to fit up good. And it still doesn't fit up perfectly, but it's good enough that whatever's not quite perfect, I can fill with weld. So I think I'm gonna put a few tacks on this so that it holds its shape, and we'll run back to the tractor and test fit it again. If everything seems to line up good and fit well, then we can just go ahead and make a back plate for it. We're just kind of doing this one step at a time, and I think this is looking good, and I think it's ready to go. I can't help myself, I gotta do a little mock-up real quick. That fits up really good. I'm happy with that. So we're making progress. Let's make the back plate now. All right, I've got the switch panel all done here and put together, and I've also got the 8N here in the shop now, so we can start installing a lot of this stuff. One other thing that I have to figure out first though is where am I gonna mount the lights on the rear of the tractor? The front facing lights are easy because there are factory mounting tabs on this loader frame, although they need to be modified a little bit because these lights are a lot bigger than anything that they were using back in the 50s. But as far as where these rear facing lights are gonna go, I haven't quite decided yet. I'm thinking probably the smartest way to do it is to utilize these factory holes here, and then over the years somebody drilled another hole down there. So I think I could use these holes to bolt some sort of a custom bracket to this fender. I just have to make sure that it doesn't interfere with my toolbox lid when I open it. So I think that will be a good place for this side. On the other side, we've got the same factory hole. I can drill another hole here if I think that I need it, but this one will be a lot easier. It's not gonna be in the way of anything else. So I think that's the plan. It could change by the time we get to doing that, but let's first get the switch panel mounted up to the tractor and kind of see how all that looks. All right, well, I think that turned out pretty good. It looks nice. It almost looks like it belongs there. You can definitely tell that it's not factory, but I like it. So anyway, now that that is done, it's kind of on to the hard part, and that is I have to make these mounting points back here for the rear facing lights. So let me show you how I'm gonna do that. I think that the best way, or the best looking way to do this, is gonna be to cut out like a 3 or a 4 inch long plate and get it in the vise and sort of add a curve to it so that it matches the contour of this fender. And then we'll get these holes drilled in the plate so that it just bolts right up to the fender and looks good. So from there, we'll weld a vertical piece of like round stock maybe, or possibly some small square tubing if I can find it. But it'll come up and then over on a 90. We could gusset it if we think it needs that. And then we'll put a little flat piece up there to weld or to bolt the light to. This idea is still in the concept phase, so we're probably gonna change it as we go, but that's sort of the plan that I'm starting with, so let's try it. Okay, easy part's done. Now we've got to curve these so that they match the curvature of the fender. This is gonna be a lot of trial and error, a lot of back and forth. That's why I definitely wanted to wait to do this until I had the tractor in the shop. We got a lot of movement. We wanna get rid of that. So we're not wanting to go much. Okay, we're not there yet, but we're close. Beautiful. Now that this curve is right, we just have to mark holes, drill them, and yeah, keep on moving. I've been really struggling trying to figure out how I want to mount a fixture onto this plate so that it holds a light. So when I set out to do this, this seemed like such a simple thing, but what ended up happening is anything that comes off of this plate straight up is going to block this bolt. Not that I really think I'll ever have to replace it, but you never know. So I didn't want to do that. I didn't really want to try to have something come straight out and then angle up, just because the geometry was, I don't know, my brain just wasn't up to the task today. So I think what I'm going to end up doing is, I've got this little piece of angle iron cut out here.
I want to try to sort of attach it to the corner of the plate here, and then we'll shave and sort of shape this a little bit so that it looks cool. I don't really like the way that just regular angle iron looks, but if I modify this and sort of do what I'm planning to do, I think it's going to look all right. All right, after about an hour of cutting, welding, and grinding, this is what we've got. It may not be the greatest, but it's gonna work just fine. So all that's really left to do now is I need to drill holes in the top so that I can mount the lights on, and then I gotta get these things painted. All right, well, that is basically the idea. These turned out a little bit taller than they need to be, but you know, they're gonna be fine. They just look a little bit funny. I'm sure if I think about it long and hard enough, I can think of a reason why I meant to do that. So I think we can disassemble this and get these things painted up. Once they get dry, we can install these lights permanently. I've got everything painted up now, and I made some brackets for the front-facing lights. I didn't film any of that because they're really basic. It's just some flat bar welded together. I didn't think you guys really needed to see that. It's not great paint drying weather, but I've got everything under my heat lamp to hopefully speed that process up a little bit. And in the next video, I'm anticipating that we'll have everything ready that we need to get the lights mounted on the tractor and see how everything works. But until then, I think I'm gonna call this one here. Thanks for hanging out in the shop with me today, guys, and I hope I'll see you again on Farmer Tyler Ranch.